We're talking about this image called Heat and Dust. It's from a selection of photographs that I produced from my Wrangler series and was originally photographed in McCoy, a Black Mountain Ranch in Colorado, which is high up in the Rockies, a few hours outside Denver. I was there for a session and I was interested to understand more about the way of the modern cowboy. It's interesting to me that since the 1880s, nothing has really changed about the saddle, the stirrup, the reins, or indeed the clothes that the cowboy wears. And if, for instance, this image had been sepia toned, it could be believed that it had been shot in 1880 and not in 2015. What I wanted to do with this particular shot is that I wanted to show the drama and the impact of what happens when the wrangler tries to rope a steer in the corral. They gather the animals together, they let them out one by one, and part of enhancing their skill and their ability as horsemen is to throw a lariat around either the hoof or the horns of the steer, jump off the horse, tie the legs together, and they get points for that. The reason for doing any of this, whether it's in a corral or it's outside on the range, is to be able to brand cattle that have been born so that people know which herd or which ranch the cattle belongs to. So this sport is a spectacle that is done in order to amuse tourists who go there to see this, but also to allow the wranglers to perfect their horseman skills. Now here, the steer has just escaped the horse, so they've come to an abrupt halt. But I photographed them in a way which recorded some of the movement and activity, and that can be seen in the suspension of the dust around the cowboy and the fact that the rear quarters of the horse are still moving as it's steadying itself. However, there is also an air of resignation in the horse's head because it's thought to itself, I've done this before, and I suspect I'm going to have to do it again because we don't have the steer at the end of the lariat that the cowboy is handling. But I also like the position of the cowboy. His head's down, he's looking at gathering his rope again. There's this extraordinary drama and spectacle of this dust around him. And there's an air of resignation, which I think comes over quite strongly in the shot. Now the shot's gone through a process in post-production. It was originally photographed in colour, and it had a certain energy in colour, but I knew that if I converted it to black and white, and I worked on both the contrast and the texture and some of the cropping, I would produce more of a landscape image which would show a transitory moment that had happened over the period of 3 or 4 seconds, where something was either realised, had not been realised, or said something about the story that we find ourselves viewing. The evening light helped a lot because there were a lot of clouds in the sky, and a beam of sunlight fell over the ranch and illuminated the cowboy's hat and the face of the horse and allowed for this wonderful dust to be billowing around them and presented in such a way which gives it some extra drama. Without those things, the image wouldn't be quite so interesting. But that is the construction of the shot. That is the reason why. And I was aware of what was happening before I actually pressed the shutter button, as I must have shot maybe 200 or 300 frames of similar activity. And once I'd worked out where the light was most effective, where the horse would end up, and what would happen, it allowed me to fix a position, set up my equipment in such a way, choose the shutter speed and the f-stop, and take a series of burst photographs, one after the other, normally 3 to 4 over a second, and find which one actually expressed the story that I was looking for. So as a photographer, I go with an intent to capture something in my mind, and I wait for all these disparate parts to come together in order to realize one single photograph. It doesn't happen all the time. There are hard disks full of images that don't quite work. But for me, this one works really well, and I hope you enjoy it too.